I start, I just wanted to ask you, have you been enjoying these live chapter readings? Because our co-authors have done an amazing job. It's been so wonderful to watch them sharing. And the ones about tapping, I think, really stood out to me and resonated because I've used tapping for years and just wanted to share a short story with you because if you haven't tried that, I urge you to. Years ago, I was out in the snow and ice, and I was reminded because we're getting a lot of snow today here in the Poconos. I slipped and fell because it was like solid ice outside and cracked the back of my head on the ice. And as I lay there on the ground trying to catch my breath and figure out what had just happened, I could feel the blood pooling in my head. And it's like, oh, great, what am I going to do? I do not want to go to the hospital. I'm not a doctor's person. So while I lay there on the ground, I started tapping. And I tap on healing blood and energy flowing through freely through my body. And I just kept tapping on that statement and that statement alone because that's what I wanted. I wanted that blood to keep flowing, to not pool in my brain. And a few minutes later, I got up. I was okay. I didn't have to go to the hospital, and I'm still here, so it worked. Now, I'm not saying you should always use it and don't go to the hospital. I'm a little extreme. But that's the power of tapping. And I've also used it to fix my own carpal tunnel. So it's super powerful, not just for emotional, but for physical things. And I encourage you to use that. And also, go through this book and read the chapters because there is just some marvelous guidance in here for all areas of your life. And the wonderful thing about it is, you don't just read it once and then forget about it. You can go back to these techniques over and over and over and use them in your life. So I encourage you to do that. Thank you so much for being here. So let's get started with the chapters, shall we? All right. So, my story. Nearly 70% of individuals will experience signs and symptoms of imposter syndrome at least once in their life. The voice of imposter syndrome creeps into your psyche, taunting you with words like, "You're a pretender. You don't belong." I want you to know that is a lie. As a survivor of imposter syndrome, I'm here to tell you that it's real and it will suck the joy out of your life if you let it. My battle with the imposter demon was painful, devastating, and expensive. It was also instructive, and as it turns out, it was an important part of my life journey. Today, I know this truth, and I hope after I share my story that you'll know it, you'll trust it, and believe it, because it is universal truth. You are an incredible being, unique in all the world. There's not another like you. Just as snowflakes are unique, so too are you. A great deal of love, care, and intention was woven into your soul matrix. You have the ability to bring amazing insights and world-changing knowledge to whatever endeavor you choose to be a part of. You are a magnificent soul, and you're perfect just as you are. Your underlying purpose is to seek out higher consciousness, find what feeds your soul, do it. That's the path to bliss. That is soul nirvana. The seeds of imposter syndrome. I've always been driven. Learn more, do more, be more. You might say I'm a professional student. That incessant drive meant there wasn't a whole lot of allowing or slowing down to appreciate my accomplishments, or even life for that matter. It was always onward to the next goal. Maybe you can relate. I didn't question, it was my normal. Everyone felt that, didn't they? Didn't they? If I only knew then what I know now. In retrospect, I could see there was a black hole of neediness, sucking up my joy, demanding more, more, more. Nothing was ever enough. I was never enough until I was. At the root of imposter syndrome is low self-esteem. And I had a bushel barrel of that. Sitting on top of the world, or how I arrived at the doorstep of imposter syndrome. In 1987, I started my first business, which was word processing. It felt great to be in control of my destiny. That was before the internet was even invented. Can you imagine that? So there was no Googling for entrepreneurial advice. It was fly by the seat of your pants and figure out as you go. Since I needed a way to manage my growing business efficiently, I began dabbling in database software. It wasn't long until I had a snappy custom system that functioned with push button ease. My kind of software, it does its job and it gets out of the way so you can do the work that brings in the revenue. Jazzed about my creation, I began telling my clients how much time it was saving me. Plus, it worked the way I wanted it to. It was unnecessary to follow someone else's rules about how to track my data. Of course, they wanted their own system. So once more, my business evolved. I became a custom database developer. Who would have thunk it, right? I remember one lady, a music rep, she'd been doing all of her bookkeeping the old-fashioned way, on paper. When we met, she was beside herself, practically wailing, "I haven't paid my artists their royalties for more than a year." She pulled out handfuls of paper records from a file drawer and declared, "I desperately need to get this resolved. Can you please help me?" The system I designed for her reduced the task to pushing a button, entering a date range, and then hitting the enter button, and voila. Her printer fired up. She now had a complete report compiling all those royalty payments. Her eyes grew big with astonishment as she beamed from ear to ear. An enormous undertaking had now become a simple routine. Yeah, baby. What a sweet moment that was. My old nemesis, low self-esteem, seemed to have been banished. I was now free to enjoy the satisfaction and success of my growing business. Those were exciting and heading days. I was on the leading edge of database publishing, and I was thrilled to work with some of the biggest publishers in New York City, including Little Golden Books, which was a treasured childhood friend. It was one of those pinch me to make sure it's real moments. I was flying high. Around that time, a huge database software company invited selected companies to partner with them. They needed trusted programmers to refer their clients to. My work with database publishing had already been recognized and highlighted in their company newsletter and marketing materials, and that encouraged me to apply. Much to my astonishment, I was accepted. That was a giant leap into the big leagues. Amazing and terrifying at the same time. It triggered my low self-esteem. I thought it had been banished. No. Turns out it was simmering below the surface, just waiting for the opportunity to reappear. Worse yet, it was poised to introduce me to its evil spawn, imposter syndrome. Partnership's a bitch. Several times a year, we partners met with corporate to hear about the latest and the greatest innovations. There was a lot of focus on best practices and sharing our programming code. Up until then, I'd been really proud of my code. It was logical, it was simple, and it was effective. Pretty impressive for somebody who was mostly self-taught, I felt. As I sat in those meetings observing others' code, doubt crept in. Maybe there was a reason to write code that appeared to be so convoluted. Maybe mine wasn't so good after all. Maybe. Around that same time, my business had inched up to 6 figures, which caused a lot of mixed feelings. Hitting that milestone really messed with my head because it was so contrary to my self-identity. I never dreamed that was even possible for me. You see, I only have a degree in secretarial science. In fact, I was a secretary from this tiny little town of Eden, Ohio. My father was a factory worker slash farmer, and he labored for just pennies. We were poor. I had no formal training as a programmer. None of that mattered on my way to success, but now that I was comparing myself, To others, my lack of credentials mattered way too much, and the proverbial rug was about to be pulled out from under me. Each partner meeting worsened that feeling that I was a pretender to the party. What was I doing amongst all these highly educated people who were, quote, real programmers? When I compared my code to theirs, I judged that mine was lacking. A voice in the back of my mind screamed, "Amateur!" Once that taunting voice took off like a runaway freight train, there was no escaping the self-condemnation. My confidence and joy were crushed. I felt as small as Alice after she took the blue pill in Wonderland. I didn't measure up. What was I even doing there? Tormenting myself incessantly with these thoughts, I was powerless to stop. My confidence was so shattered that I found myself at the annual developers conference telling people I didn't belong. Unconsciously, I was probably hoping to find somebody to tell me otherwise. But that didn't happen. Instead, their lack of support served to reinforce my doubts further. My developer colleagues must have thought I was having some sort of breakdown, and I suppose in a way I was. Or it's more likely that they were giving little thought to me because they were all enmeshed in their own thoughts and worries, which is usually the case. Over the years, I've learned that's true more often than not. Picking up the pieces. Back then, I'd never heard of imposter syndrome. But, it doesn't care if you know its name. Imposter syndrome will eat you up, swallow you whole, and then spit you out. My ugly consequence of imposter syndrome was self-sabotaging myself right out of that six-figure business. I had built it through grit and sheer determination. I did not recertify as a partner, and I stopped taking new clients. My business dissolved with barely a whimper. Thankfully, not everyone allows imposter syndrome to defeat them as thoroughly as I did. Still, it's a reality to a lesser degree for nearly 70% of us, which brings us back around to that universal truth I mentioned at the beginning. You are a magnificent being. You're unique in all the world. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise, especially you. When you understand the truth of who you are, it becomes illogical to compare yourself to anyone. There is no one like you. If you must compare, then compare with yourself. Are you growing and expanding? If yes, terrific. Keep doing it. If not, why not? And what are you going to do about it? That nugget of truth is the key to more peace, happiness, and success. It's the key to being more fully who you intended to be in this lifetime. Reinventing myself. Over the next 10 years, I tried various businesses with little success. Recovering from that level of devastation is not a trivial matter. However, in time, I did bounce back better than ever. Way better, as it turns out. The turning point for me was when I discovered the Akashic Records. In that moment, it felt as if the heavens opened up. The angels sang an aria of Welcome Home. Shortly thereafter, I, quote, met my soul, and at last I knew without a shadow of a doubt why I was on the planet. It was a transformational game changer. No programming degree required. The clarity of hindsight. What I can now see so clearly is that imposter syndrome caused me to lose sight of the truth. Talent, hard work, and out-of-the-box thinking made it possible to achieve a level of success I never dreamed possible. I did that. My databases functioned beautifully, and they lasted. Some are still being used and updated 15 years later. That's an accomplishment of which to be proud, and today I am proud. Sadly, in my moment of devastation, I was blinded to that truth. I could only see the darkness of that black hole, and it felt like I was falling in. I wanted to run away from the pain and never look back. Years later, one of my coaches helped me get clarity about how I ended up in such a backwards, twisted knot. Reality outgrew my vision of self, and bam, I slammed into that brick wall of full-blown imposter syndrome. I was simply incongruent with who I believed myself to be. How effective we humans deceive and defeat ourselves, right? It's crazy, yet people do it to themselves every day. Now I recognize it as a form of self-torture, and I help my clients recognize and overcome it so they don't crash and burn. During my healing journey, I discovered a powerful secret to making friends with ego and forever banishing imposter syndrome and low self-esteem. It's worked for me and a great many others, and that's the tool that I'm excited to share with you now. My tool is a powwow with 3 aspects of self. It's a guided visualization journey to meet with your ego, your higher self, and your soul to promote balance and harmony within yourself. Humanity is presently evolving from an egocentric to a soul-centered oneness of being. This tool was created to facilitate that process. Your objective is to allow each aspect of self to have their say with the goal of negotiating a compromise. You may find they just want to be heard, or you may find they have some stipulations. There's no rush, and you don't want to force anything. Go with the flow, listen, and prepare to be flexible. Ego isn't evil, nor is it your enemy. Ego is simply doing what it was tasked to do, keep you safe until you die. That mocking ego voice has prevented you from impetuously cutting your life short or incurring serious injury over a great many lifetimes. However, in this new enlightened era, ego is still keeping the brakes on while soul hits the accelerator. It's time for ego to back off and allow soul to take the lead so that you might expand more fully into your purpose. This simple exercise will help you encourage that shift. It can be as long or short as you choose, and it can be repeated as often as needed. Don't be surprised if the whole process flows with ease. I highly recommend setting your intention that it be so. This work is all about energy and intention. What you'll need: a way to record your experience. You may speak it into a recorder, you may type it on an electric device, or you may handwrite it. Choose what feels best to you, but do make it a point to record it in some way, with as much detail as possible about what you see, feel, hear, and sense. This is a significant meeting, and you want to remember everything. Small details that seem insignificant in the moment may be very important at a later date. Preparation. Choose a quiet, comfortable place to sit. It can be indoors or outdoors. The important thing is that it be as free of distraction as possible. Take your seat and settle into a comfortable position. You may want to shake out your arms and your hands and flex your head and your neck. Allow all that tightness being held there to just flow away. I do have an audio recording if you prefer to listen to one, and you'll find the link for that at akashaunleashed.com/woo, W-U. You'll find that link in the book for ease of access. The exercise begins. When you're ready, close your eyes and take 3 deep breaths. Breathe in as long as it feels comfortable, holding as long as it feels comfortable, exhaling as long as it feels comfortable. After the 3rd exhale, begin breathing normally, putting your focus upon your breathing. With each exhale, Notice yourself slipping into a more deeply relaxed state while any tightness flows down your body and exits through your fingers and the bottoms of your feet. Take your time. There's no rush. You'll notice your arms and hands feeling heavy, your breath steady and even. In this deeply relaxed space, allow yourself to slowly drift up into and then out through your crown chakra, which is the top of your head. As you move slightly higher, you'll find yourself, your soul self, comfortably seated, cross-legged, in a triangular formation with ego and higher soul. If they have not yet arrived, call upon them and invite them to join you. They should be there in short order. No judgment about what they look like. Allow them to present themselves in whatever way they wish. Once the three of you are seated facing each other, welcome them warmly. You may engage in some preliminary friendly conversation or get right to the point. This is your journey, so do what feels best to you. Be sure to take note of what they look like, what they're wearing, and any details you notice. Those details could be important to gleaning a greater understanding later. When you feel the lines of communication are open, turn your attention to ego. Inquire about ego's needs and wants. Repeat the same with higher self. Having heard both of them out, explain soul's position. They need to understand soul is not being frivolous. Soul's expanding into a higher frequency state of being, and their cooperation is vital to the process. Your purpose is not to boss them around. You want to elicit their cooperation. Once they understand your why, they might surprise you with a willingness to work together. Continue the dialogue until you're satisfied. Then respectfully thank them and promise to abide by whatever agreements you have made, asking them to do the same. You may choose to embrace them or not. Do what feels best to you. When you're ready, return to present reality. Allow yourself to float back down through your crown chakra and settle completely back into your body. Take a couple of deep breaths, wiggle your fingers and your toes, and when you're ready, open your eyes. Welcome back to your new state of peace, balance, and harmony as a soul-centered being. That's the tool. So I hope that you find that useful. And let me just tell you the experience I had when I did this myself the first time. My soul came in all grumpy, wearing this long overcoat buttoned all the way to the top with this hat smushed down on her head, and not really wanting to be there, but she showed up. Higher self was kind of a little bit of a flibberty-gibbet, happy just to get along, the peacemaker, feeling like she was being pulled in a tug of war between soul and ego. And the amazing thing that happened for me during the process was that by the time we got to the end, ego had opened up some buttons and was more relaxed, and I was even seeing a little bit of a glimmer in her eyes, like, hey, maybe this will be fun. It was really a fascinating process. It was a divine download, and I'm delighted to share it with you. So I would love it if you'd let me know how your process works out. You can reach me through my connection at Woo, and you'll find that link in the comments there or at the top. Or you can catch me on Facebook or my website, akashaunleashed.com. I would love to dialogue with you about your experience. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Anna, Vanessa, Jeanette, I see you there. Yeah. Do you remember those golden books, Jeanette? They were just so precious when we were little kids. It was amazing. So some of you have gone through a little bit of your own dark night of the soul, I'm sure. Yeah. And you're so right, Jeanette. Comparison is the thief. And why do we do that to ourselves? Because I guess somewhere along the way we grew up in that whole competitive spirit of always looking to others to see, am I doing it right? Am I enough? And from creator's perspective, that's just such a waste of time and such a defeat. So remember, if you take nothing else away from this, only compare to yourself because you're unique. There's no one else you can compare to. So it's only about you being better, learning, growing, and expanding because that's the soul journey. Thanks for being here, Corrine. Thank you, everybody. So my time is just about up. I appreciate all of you so much. Love and blessings to you, and I will see you around the wellness universe. Bye for now.